Hello, public opinion aficionados, and welcome to Rasmussen Reports, the only pollster who, at great cost, asked inconvenient questions about the COVID 19 vaccines. Now, incidentally, we just got out of a 6 month stint in YouTube jail yesterday, and here we are one day later with a new set of absolutely horrifying questions about the COVID 19 vaccines. Now, I've said it before and I'll say it again. We are not doctors. We're not giving you medical advice. We're not drawing conclusions or making inferences from the data. We're simply just asking other human beings in America the answers to a very simple set of questions. Now, of course, there's probably going to be some piteous little trolls who trust the science, TM, who will report us simply for just doing the job that the media, the medical industry, academia, the pharmaceutical industry, and the government should have done themselves. And all that job is to just be curious. And of course, some of you continue to ask why we're still here on YouTube. And despite them taking down a bunch of our videos, demonetizing some, and putting us in jail for, medical disinformation, YouTube's actually been a really great way to reach a lot of people we wouldn't have otherwise. In fact, our number one video is on election irregularities in the Arizona midterms, but our number two video is also a video we did about COVID-19 vaccines. If you haven't seen our other videos about the vaccines, hang on till the end and I'll do a quick roundup of all of our major findings. And if you appreciate the public service that we're doing, you can help us out by just clicking subscribe on YouTube or Rumble. It helps more people see these numbers. And let's start with a baseline question. This we almost use to calibrate our question set. Did you receive a COVID-19 vaccine? And out of 1,250 Americans asked May 20th through 22nd, 67% said yes, 29% said no. We've asked this question many times in the last couple of years, and this is pretty much in line, close to the margin of error, although fewer say yes now than they did before. We're used to seeing a number in the 70 to 72 range. And I would attribute some of that to people maybe conveniently forgetting that they had the COVID-19 vaccine. But here are the numbers by age, and fewer young people say they got the vaccine, and many more older people. 82% of people over the age 65 said they got the vaccine in this country. And here are the numbers by party. Republicans got the vaccine less, but independents also got the vaccines less than Democrats. 54% for Republicans, 62% for independents, but 84% for Democrats. And again, those numbers are somewhat in line, although we have seen numbers for Republicans in the 60s for this question just a year or two. So maybe it's the Republicans who are forgetting about those vaccines most. But on to the meat of this. Do you know someone who personally died from the COVID-19 virus? And 42% of American adults say yes. 53% say no. And I'm kind of surprised, perhaps, that 42% number isn't bigger. The headline here is that a majority of Americans do not know somebody that died from the COVID-19 virus. And of course, we've said personally, so that's, somebody that they have met and know, but ostensibly Americans mostly know maybe like hundreds of people. I don't know. Only 42% say yes to that question. But on to the results by party. And this is an important slide to show because it says that signal is pretty consistent across political ideology. That means that people, I think, are very objectively answering this question. In fact, more Republicans than independents say that they know somebody who died from the COVID-19 virus. And we see a similar thing on this slide. This is the results to that question by whether people said they had a vaccine or not. And vaccinated people are slightly more likely to say they know someone who died from COVID. But unvaccinated people, 41% of them also say yes. And I would expect to see the yes signal higher in the vaccinated population because they have older people in there and they ostensibly know more people in the high risk group for the COVID-19 virus. But here's the moment you've been waiting for, the big news out of this question set. Do you know someone personally who died from side effects of the COVID-19 vaccine? Now, this is a pretty high bar to clear. We don't say think, we say, do you know someone? And 19% of the country about 1 in 5 Americans say they know someone personally who died from the side effects of the COVID-19 vaccine. Now, it's less than that 42% number, but it is not zero. Here are the numbers by party. And as you can see, Republicans are more likely to say they know somebody who died from side effects of the COVID-19 vaccine. So there is obviously something going on here. It could be that they're getting more independent news. It could be that they're following politicians that are raising questions about the vaccine. It could be a lot of things. But the important thing to point out on this slide is that the numbers for independents and Democrats are not zero. 15% of independents and 15% of Democrats say they know someone personally who died from side effects of the COVID-19 vaccine. And here are those numbers by age. And also, there's a pretty interesting signal here. Younger Americans are more likely, quite a bit more, to say they know someone who died from the vaccine than older Americans. It's 22% for 18 to 39-year-olds, but 16% for those over the age of 65. And there's lots of things that could be causing this as well. I'd love your thoughts in the comments. A million things, maybe even simple ones like 18 to 39-year-olds tend to know more people than older Americans do. Or maybe it's something more insidious. But here are the numbers by whether people said they were vaccinated or not. And 29% of unvaccinated Americans say they know someone who died from the COVID-19 vaccine. And again, possibly a lot of reasons why. One of them is potentially that they're more sensitive to information about vaccine side effects. But the important thing to point out, again, is that 14% of vaccinated Americans say they know someone who died from the COVID-19 vaccines. And here are the numbers by whether people who were vaccinated said they got a booster shot or not. And 13% of boosted Americans and 18% of unboosted Americans, all of these people vaccinated, also say they know someone who died from the side effects of the COVID-19 vaccine. Now, platinum subscribers of Rasmussen Reports get to see the full crosstabs. And there is really interesting stuff in there, like these results by income and by education. And believe it or not, the most highly educated Americans, those with graduate degrees, were less likely to say they know someone who died from COVID-19 vaccine side effects, only 10% of them. And those with incomes over 200K were also least likely, only 14% of them. That's a pretty strange signal, don't you think? Now, as I promised, really quickly, I'm going to zoom through some of the major findings from our previous work on vaccines. This from December 2022, quite a while ago. Do you believe you have experienced major side effects, minor side effects, or no side effects from your COVID-19 vaccination? And 7% of all Americans back then say they had a major side effect. Another 34% said a minor side effect. So 4 in 10 Americans say they had a side effect from the vaccine, and 7% of them, which equates to about 12 million Americans, say they had a major side effect. How likely is it that the side effects of COVID-19 vaccines have caused a significant number of unexplained deaths? We titled this one "Died Suddenly" because it was kind of the peak of the cultural zeitgeist of that particular phrase. And this is also December of 2022. And 49% of Americans, a pretty strong plurality, said it was at least somewhat likely. 28% said very likely. Only 37% said not likely. Only 17% said not at all. So there's lots of headlines here, but here's one. Only 17% of Americans say that it's not at all likely that the vaccines were causing a significant number of unexplained deaths. Trust the science, right? And check out that Democrat row. 51% of Democrats, a majority, said that the vaccines were likely to be causing a significant number of unexplained deaths. 31% very likely, way more than the 23% who said not at all likely. And this final hit back from about a year ago, has any member of your household died whose death you think may have been caused by side effects of the COVID-19 vaccines? And 10% of Americans said yes. Now, that number is smaller than we see in today's question because we used the qualifier in your household, which is tighter than you know personally. But the important point to point out is that this 10% was almost the same as the number of people who had someone in their household who they say died from the COVID virus, which was 11%. A roughly equal number of families were impacted by the COVID virus and the COVID vaccine. Now, I don't want to get too much into conclusions here. We've probably already said way too much for YouTube. This is probably going to get demonetized, if not immediately deleted, and we're probably going to go right back in jail. But here's what I'd like to end on. Our call to everyone who's been missing in action on this topic. Search your soul and join us. Or try to prove us wrong. Either one. We'll be waiting